The magic is realising your dream, watching it appear in front of you, creating the images that you've got in your mind, and the magic comes from when the process takes over as well, and it throws back and kicks back and does something that you weren't expecting, and you look at it again and you realise, I wasn't expecting that, but it looks amazing. And knowing the fact that most of the time you can never go back, that every image is unique, and that's the thing, it's unique. The first thing I discovered with when I started wet plate collodion photography was I was absolutely blown away when the first image arrived out of the fog of the fix. I swore a huge amount and just said, this is the effing sort of photography I've always wanted to do. And then when I started to get literally my hands dirty, I was putting egg white around the edge of the plate. I mean, how often do you use egg white when you're doing photography these days? You don't, do you? The fact that the collodion was gloopy and I'm trying to pour it, it's all going everywhere and I can't control it. Yet the images still sang through to me. My first time I ever did it, I actually took a Rolleiflex camera with me, a tiny little Rolleiflex camera, and we managed to cut a plate down, put it into a Rolleiflex, and I've got a beautiful portrait of me on a Rolleiflex. So I think what we can do with this is I suddenly realised you can take this photography wherever you want. You can put it in a box brownie. You can buy expensive cameras like I've got and expensive posh lenses, but you don't need that. You can do this with any box. All you need is a box with a lens at one end and you're off and running. So I learned that wet plate collodion can take the images that no other process for me can do. And I've created some images that I'm very hard on myself most of the time, but I've actually created some images what I'm really, really happy with. And wet collodion is the only way I could have done it. This is my very first camera. This is the Canon AE1 that I bought back in 70 something. So this was the start of my analog career. That's when I first fell in love with it. So 35mm. And I think, again, the question went back, why do I love analog? Because it still works. There hasn't been a software upgrade for this camera, in 50 years. It just works, and it still works to this day. That camera went all the way around the world with me, and that shot a lot of people. I got Bruce Springsteen concert. I was fired out with a water cannon at Wembley, and that's David Bowie shot I took. That was at Milton Keynes, taken with that camera. That's 35mm slide. That camera went everywhere with me. So my youth is in that camera. A lot of my youth and a lot of very happy memories are still in there, and it still works to this day. So this was my trip to Transylvania when I started to love photography again. So this is where I spent a month living in the woods in a cabin, surrounded by nature and wild animals and tame animals, and my beloved Wolfie that used to look after me from bears. And it was there that I fell in love with images again. I started taking pictures and just running filters like Hipstamatic. Filters that said Rolleiflex. I didn't actually know what Rolleiflex meant. And filters that actually even said wet plate collodion. Again, I didn't know what that meant. I was going to find out later on. The analog man in the digital world discovered the digital world and started to share things on Instagram, and realised there's a social platform out there we can share and enjoy each other's art. So all of these were taken on the iPhone because it's the only camera I took with me. But it was there that I just fell in love with images again, capturing images. My favourite memory, I suppose, the night when I went back to the cabin, this is the cabin I stayed in, and it was Halloween, and I went back, and the woods were over the back here, or the forests, and this is Wolfie. He used to come and protect me from wild bears at night. And when we went back to the cabin, I had no running water, no electricity, just a log fire. In the forest opposite, there were the wolves, and the wolves were all baying. Yeah, it was just magical. And I think the other thing that I loved about it was every day we would go to collect water. We had no running water, so we'd go and collect spring water in bottles, and we'd go on a horse-drawn carriage. And it just made you realise how valuable resources are and how valuable water was. You wouldn't waste it going down the toilet or brushing your teeth. You'd only use it for drinking. I learned a lot of great lessons there, life lessons that I'll never forget. Magical month. Transylvania. So when I'd come back from Transylvania, I'd fallen in love with photography again. And then while I was at work, somebody showed me the work of Vivian Mayer, who obviously shot with a Rolleiflex camera. And I bought a Rolleiflex. I thought, can I really do photography rather than use an iPhone or a digicamera? I mean, these are all my Rolleiflex shots with my daughters, with macro lenses. And I just fell in love with Rolleiflex cameras and film, analog, anything analog. And I ended up taking it around India with 48 rolls of film. And it was just absolutely magical. The light came through from the back window and lit the bride up from behind. And there were photographers there and nobody was going to take the shot down the table. And I just grabbed my Rolleiflex, ran to the end of the table and got the shot. I mean, you've got to get the shot, haven't you? The profile, the light behind. I mean, that was a shot that I took of my daughter, got Photography of the Year award or whatever, I can't remember now. I was only allowed to take 2 photographs of my daughter. She said, okay, only 2. So I had 2 shots with natural light, both taken on the Rolleiflex with colour film in it. And it's the muted tones on here and that single light coming through the window in that profile. I mean, it's just beautiful. I love that shot. And I adore that. I love the fact that she owns this picture. She's the powerful one in this picture. This one was, I love this picture because this was outside the British Museum. The rain was pounding down and I was underneath an umbrella. And because the beauty of a Rolleiflex is it's twin lens, so I was able to put the camera on the ground and you can't see it really from what you're seeing, but you can actually get the water bouncing back off the pavement, which I loved. And my daughter on a special birthday, that was a special picture as well. That's another thing to remember is whenever you take pictures with a digital or analog, print everything out. If you don't print it out and put a date on it, it's kind of a bit lost. By that time I'd fallen in love with photography again. Again, it was all Rolleiflex. India, well, I did have a digicamera in India as well, which was absolutely beautiful. And to be honest, you go to India, you just got to capture light because when you're in Varanasi, I mean, obviously there are more colours in India than there are in the rest of the world. They have an extra part of their sort of rainbow. So yeah, I mean, these are just beautiful characters. When I was going around India, I had a Rolleiflex. I had 48 rolls of film with me, and everywhere I went, everybody wanted to be photographed with a Rolleiflex camera, which was wonderful. So yeah, so again, that inspired me to take more film. Yeah, this is a classic shot. I just sat there and I'm watching the sun go down, and this guy had just done his ritual bathing, and then at the end of the day, you would wash your clothes on the steps. And I sat and I watched him for 10 minutes, and I had my Rolleiflex, and I never like to steal a picture. I always like the person to give me the permission to take the picture. And he looked at me, and I looked at him, and I looked at the camera, and he nodded, and he gave me the permission, and I pushed the button, and I got the picture. It's all about, photography is photography, whether it's digital or analog. If you're not engaged with the picture, and the people aren't engaged with you, there's something missing, and this is why I love this picture here. All these girls I'd had permission from their parents to take a picture. They were excited schoolgirls looking out of a window. And what I love is the one girl looking at me, just the one eye looking at me. This guy didn't want his picture taken, and then this beautiful big smile came out. Yeah, so it was all these people. And then there's one story, this girl here. So we were sat having a cup of chai with this dear gentleman here. All of a sudden this girl poked her head around the corner, and it was his niece. And I just saw these wonderful eyes, and again I asked if I nodded to her, and she said yes, and he said yes, and I got the shot. And her eyes, they were just so beautiful. Yeah, so photography is photography, however you use it. Yeah. And it, obviously, like everyone, it's all in the eyes, isn't it? Always in the eyes. Always. Yeah. There you go. Photography. The first collodion pictures I ever took were on the workshop I first did, and I didn't know what I was doing, so I took a Rolleiflex camera with me, and it had a a plate glass back to it, and I managed to put this into it, and I'll take it out to show you. This is a tintype, so this is the first tintype I ever took. In fact, I didn't take it, I loaded it, prepared it, but obviously the other guy took it. So that's my first ever portrait on one of my Rolleiflex cameras, which I love that camera, I love that picture. And it's just the detail, obviously, with the Rolleiflex. Mix a Rolleiflex with wet collodion and hello, magic happens. So that's precious to me, that one. We move on then to how I started large format photography. The way I started large format photography was 5.4 with a Rolleiflex, and it grew and grew and it grew, and I got more and more cameras and different lenses. So these were shots. This was Camille taken down the lane with a large projector lens, and then of course, because I've got negatives, I started using a 1950s enlarger in my darkroom. So, and one thing leads to another. So I start processing more and more, and then now I start to emboss them now and give limited editions, signed limited editions as well, which is nice. And then I moved on to, as you would expect, 10x8 photography. So this is 10x8 negatives. So these are great big sheets of film. They're huge sheets of film, but very rewarding to shoot with. That was a shoot with Camille. This is taken with the large mahogany beast. So this is the massive camera I've got, 1900 camera. And these are shot at f64. So the whole world is in focus when I shoot with that. Then I fell in love with the work of George Harrell, who did all the Hollywood photographs. So this is one of my favourite models, photographed her against a mirror. Could I do what George did? And it goes on. There's more and more negatives and prints. This is my daughter. She was reading me, what was she reading me? She was reading me Alice in Wonderland while she was resting one day in the back garden. So we decided to set up Alice in Wonderland as a shoot. So I dressed her as Alice in Wonderland. We brought mannequins out. And this is a 10x8 glass Ambrotype plate. And we took a contact print off of it. So I've got the beauty of an Ambrotype, but I've got a print that I can actually produce more of. And then one of my all-time favourite shoots ever was with my good friend Graham at King's College in Cambridge. These two girls were the students. They were so engaged, and this girl had recently shaved her head, which I thought was absolutely beautiful. And I got this shot of the two of them, which I think is such a beautiful, tender shot of the two of them together. They were so close, they were so loving, it was just so perfect. We have window light coming through here, and we've got one flash coming over from the other side. And that's a 10x8 glass plate, which I've done these prints from. And I think somewhere else I've got the other print to show, which is the Ambrotype that I did contact prints from. And there it is. So this was her, and I had a big thing going on at the time with I love hijabs. I love anything Arabic, and I love Muslim, that type of subject of women. So she wore this hijab for me, which is beautiful. And again, it's just got this natural sunlight coming through here. And we've got one flash going off there. So this is a glass plate, and I've done a print from it, which I've done a few of. And then I stamped them. You probably can't see it, but it's got an official stamp on it as well. Yeah, and then other stuff. This one here that got me banned off of Facebook because it had a mannequin in it, which is fine with me. That's okay. It goes on and on. And this was a great picture. This is my good friend Gabriella. So she posed me for this one. This is a royal regal shot. And we've got lots of massive spotlights outside. I've got huge rays of light coming through and smoke machines, and it's done on a large format camera. And this one actually, I've done a print and a copy of this, and it went over to America. Went to my friend Sean Shane in America. He's just photographed Greta Thunberg, and so he sent me a picture of Greta, and I sent him this one signed as well. Yeah, and then there's some more here. That one's Camille, and then we move on to alternative process. So these are Polaroid emulsion lifts. So we lift the emulsion off Polaroids and put it onto other things. and then start moving into cyanotypes as well, and various alternative printing processes. This was taken with the big Packard manual shutter, so I've just got this big bulb that I squeeze that takes the shot for me, so this totally analog, that one. Mystery starts to come when we've got ambrotypes. So ambrotypes are glass negatives created with wet plate collodion. So I'm now working with the goddess of latex, divine person to work with, and so this is a glass negative, 1851 process wet plate collodion contact print. So again, starting to take us in all other directions. This guy here is absolutely fantastic. He was the guy that he's basically got a nail stuck straight up through his nose, and tiny depth of field, shooting with a projector lens f2.8. I've just focused on his eye, so literally the nail's out of focus, and all you can see is looking into his soul and looking into his nose at the same time. It's like, yeah, that guy was a very cool guy. And of course, then there's my daughter, my beautiful daughter, and that's entirely inspired by Man Ray, the girl with the long hair. That's shot on a Crown Graphic 1948. Again, she said I was only allowed 3 shots, and I've used that in lots and lots of exhibitions now, and it's kind of become one of my signature photographs. It's quite cool, isn't it? Well, my dear, I think you need to be immortalised, don't you? Too fluffy. Too small. So we should go for F5.6. Maybe wide open like 3. Body art looks good. Feathers look good. Okay, let's take the face down a bit. Got some nice artifacts coming around the edges. Exactly what we want. The body art looks fantastic. The reason I switched from digital to traditional methods was I'd become bored. I found I was spending more time on a computer than in a darkroom. And at the moment I saw the work of Vivian Mayer and then Dave Burnett for the 2012 Olympics large format, I was hooked. That was it, I'm done. The collodion process can only be wet because you're coating the plate with a solution of collodion, which is the substrate that sits on top of your plate or your glass plate or tin plate. And then when it's immersed in the silver nitrate solution, it becomes photographic. But it's only photographic while it's wet. The moment it becomes dry, it's no longer photographic. So you've got this timeline going on. You've got an urgency creeping in to create those images. And then once that's done, the plate is exposed. You develop it in red safe light and you get the image appear in your hand, but you can't quite see it. It's not until it goes into the fix and the fix clears, and through the fog of the fix the image reveals itself. That is the truly magical part. The difference between ambrotypes and tintypes is that a tintype is a positive image on a black tin plate. So the moment you fix the plate, you see a positive image in your hand that you can pick up and look at this positive image on a black background. But if we're doing an ambrotype, it's done on a sheet of clear glass. And what we're actually creating is a negative image. And when we fix it, we see a negative image depending on the colour of the tray we've got. So if we bring it up and hold it in front of light, we've got a negative image. And the moment it travels across and goes in front of something dark, it turns to positive. Believe me, it's a truly magical experience, and I still get a kick out of showing it and seeing it every time I do it. It's a wonderful process. There really is no comparison between digital and wet plate. I mean, at one point I was doing digital on my iPhone and using Hipstamatic and using wet plate filters. I didn't even know what wet plate was, and the moment I did my first wet plate, I got it, like we all do. The moment you do your first wet plate, you just get it, and they are two completely separate worlds. The challenges with wet plate collodion and how to overcome them are everything is manual. It's a manual process. So you're completely in control of it, or you're trying to control it. Because what we're trying to do is we're trying to balance chemistry, we're trying to balance light, we're trying to bring the two together. For instance, our silver nitrate has to be clean and pure. Every plate we put in there, it gets contaminated by the collodion. We're trying to understand that. We're trying to make sure that as our collodion goes on, we're not contaminating it with our fingers around the edges, because that creates little things called oysters that run in, and you get these little explosions on the plate. But having said all that, there are people that that work with the process that produce beautiful, clean plates. But for me, the joy of it is the weird edges, the little flashes that come up, the swirls. I actually teach people to try and contaminate the plate afterwards. I have some diluted silver nitrate that I paint on the plate in certain places, so it runs in and interacts and creates explosions and weird effects. And for me, that's the art. That's what I'm trying to control, is the light in the room, how long the exposure is, the collodion, how long it's in the silver nitrate, bringing it all together. And then the last tiny bit is when we're fixing, or when we're actually washing off the developer. We can control the process as we develop. We can actually wash off in certain places. So in other words, we carry on developing on parts of the plate while I'm actually washing off other parts. And it's just, there's nothing else like it. The very first picture I took wet plate would have been when I did my first workshop, and it would have been the other person that was on the workshop with me. And the moment it appeared in the fix, I can't tell you the language I used because it would be banned. But there was a lot of expletives, and I just said, I finally found the process that I want to do. This is it. What I want to achieve when I'm shooting wet plate collodion is a unique piece of art. It is a piece of art. I'm not just recording the scene exactly as it is. the process comes in and brings its own art with it and brings stuff into the picture that I hadn't even imagined, you know. So between me and the process, we create a unique piece of art. My photography dreams are probably that my daughter, who's 13, takes over for me. She's already doing wet plate collodion, and she's taken some beautiful plates. And if I can pass it on to the next generation and get other people excited, that'll do for me. I can hang up my lens after that. The craziest setup I've worked at is yet to come, probably. There was one which was involved a model being 15 foot up a ladder with a parachute wrapped around her as a dress, shooting with a World War II bomber lens through an old camera, and all the complications that come with that, and the unique image. We created something straight out of Alice in Wonderland. The picture that took me the longest to put together was with a good friend of mine, Graham, who's a wet plate photographer, and Fairy, a model friend of ours. And that took us 2 days to set the studio up, because the shot actually had 14 exposures on one plate, because bearing in mind wet plate has to be done while it's wet, so we've only got 10 minutes. So that was the most complicated and probably the most rewarding as well. When I'm out on the road doing wet plate collodion, obviously my darkroom has to go with me. So I've got a large tent that I use, which I can go inside, coat my plates up, do all my work. I've got a small portable darkroom, which I'm in the process of building right now. And it's going to be light enough that it can go in a backpack with the chemicals and the camera. So that's my next project. I'm currently working on a few projects. I've been doing some shots for a calendar for somebody, which is quite nice. I've got a shoot coming up with a good friend of mine, Katarina. I don't know what we're going to be shooting. Religious icons, all sorts of things. Who knows? But whenever I shoot with her, it's very exciting. And I think I've got 4 shoots coming up, plus some more workshops. So who knows? That's the beauty of wet plate. I never quite know what's going to happen. My photography influences are, it has to be Vivian Mayer, because the very first time I saw the work of Vivian Mayer, I was just bowled over and I thought, can I really do photography? I bought a Rolleiflex. Dave Burnett, he photographed the 2012 Olympics on a large format. And of course it's got to be Frederick Scott Archer, 1851. He invented this wonderful process. What I've discovered during my travels with wet plate collodion is it just opens doors to everybody, and I've yet to meet anyone that is not spellbound by the process. How amazing that here we are in 2021 with all these amazing digital this and digital that everyone is engrossed with an 1851 process, and it's just so magical. So yeah, that's what happened. So this is a self-portrait. So this was done using focused on the background. Then I've stepped into the picture, taken the shot, and I've stepped out of the picture and taken the shot again. So you can see through me. I'm a ghost. Ghost in the machine, or the ghost in the collodion. One of the joys. So I was setting up the same shot that I did with my mother all those years ago. So of course the difference with this shot and my mother's shot is it's reversed, because it's a wet collodion. So that's my mother in the background there in the same shot. Oh, yeah, I love that shot. Just a bit of fun. What I find is unique about this type of photography is the fact that you become immersed in the process. You're totally engaged. It's such a dynamic way of working and creating photography and creating, because you're physically involved with it. You're dipping plates into, you're coating plates, you're dipping them into a box of silver nitrate, you're taking them out, you're wiping them down, you're putting them into a plate holder, you're bringing it out. You've got a live plate in a box. It's literally alive, because it's only alive for 10 minutes and then it's going to not be photographic anymore. It's the excitement of seeing the image upside down, composing, going back in, the sound of a clock ticking. You know, you've got this amount of time to do it. And it's all in your hands. You can make the best plate in the world, or what you could do is you can scratch it right the way across and destroy the best plate you've ever had. That's what I find the magic of this process is. It's just unique. There's nothing I've found so far that's anywhere near as good. I've been running the workshops now for, I think probably 2 years now. Beginning I wasn't quite sure whether there'd be any interest in it, but
recently I've found so many people, especially young people, are finding that the process is starting to offer them something that digital just can't offer them. It's a hands-on process, literally, as you can see. I'm covered in silver nitrate, which contaminates my hands, which is my badge of honour. And when they leave from a workshop, they've got these unique one-of-one images, because each image is the original. There is no copy. That's the beauty of it. The way people react when they first come into the studio, I normally find there's a sense of excitement, because they've usually followed me. They've seen, they know kind of what they're going to expect, but they're not quite sure until they walk in and they see the mannequins and the rat-skulled necklace and the 1894 lenses. And then I think usually after the first half an hour of just looking around, they're ready and excited to start their analogue journey. Yeah. I find that when people first come into the darkroom, they enter my office, and they come into the sound of clocks and smell of chemicals and running water. At first, it all seems very confusing, but it's amazing how quickly, after they've seen their first image appear out of the fix, how I can just leave them alone to get on with the process, and they become comfortable with it, and it becomes their space as well then. So when the students attend the workshop, they can expect some preliminary conversations via email, telling them what's about to happen and giving them a flavour. Most of them have come to me via Instagram, so they've been watching what I do, and they have an idea of my studio and what's going to happen. When they come on the day, there's only 2 students. I only ever work with 2 students because I want them to get completely involved with the process and have plenty of hands-on. We spend the first hour or 2 doing round table, explaining lenses, PETS for lenses, the process. Safety, we run through safety because there are safety implications. Silver nitrate is very dangerous. If you get in your eye, it will blind you. So we run through all those situations. They each get their own aprons, they get rubber gloves, they get glasses, and then we head to the studio. And the first thing I get them to do is I get them to go into my other workshop and they cut down a sheet of glass. Like wondering why they need to cut down a sheet of glass? Well, they cut their own sheet of glass and they bring it into the studio. They prepare it, they clean it, and then I get them to break an egg into a jar, which again they don't understand, and they dilute it with water, just the egg white, and they put it around the edge of the plate, and then they start their first plate. They coat it with collodion, they put it in the silver nitrate, they come into the studio, view their image upside down, and then their wet collodion journey has started, and they're 9 times out of 10 they're hooked as soon as they see the image appear out of the fix. If it's a complete beginner, I would probably recommend, well, they can come along and just get excited by the process and spend a day doing it. They don't actually need to have any other knowledge at all. Just come and try it and be excited and then take it further. If you've got some experience with large format photography, because I run another workshop for that, your hands-on are already there, you're kind of in the right space. To be honest, everyone is bowled over when they look in the back of the camera on the ground glass screen and they see the image upside down. There is nothing like it. It's like watching high definition television. So the experience, I mean, when I was with UCAT, you came in, you knew what you were doing, you knew where you wanted to go, you knew how far you wanted to push the process, and you created some truly amazing art. I mean, it was staggering. And so it can go in all directions. It can be for the beginner who wants to just see what happens, and it can be for the creative who wants to push it. 9 times out of 10, they go back and they can't do without it, and they start to take the process on, which is the biggest compliment I can get. The first thing I would say to photograph with this method is, to be absolutely honest, you could really do with a studio and a darkroom, which I know everyone hasn't got. That would be useful. I personally work with beautiful big 1894 lenses, which have got these beautiful portrait traits in them, which are just superb. But I've had a guy who's come once before, and he built his own camera and built his own lens in it, and we got some stunning results. Come to it with open eyes, a fresh imagination, and a vision for something new, and it's something you can't create any other way. And wet plate collodion will completely fill that for you. So the way I look after everyone with all the chemicals around is, first of all, as I say, we do a round table, and I have a set of notes for everyone that are printed out. It's got all the history of the process. It also talks about how we maintain chemistry baths, etc., etc. But I do talk a lot about the safety aspects, because we are dealing with some dangerous chemicals here at some points. So we go through that. Students get an apron, they get eye protectors, they get their own rubber gloves, because, as I mentioned before, silver nitrate it won't harm you, but it will stain your hands if you get it on your hands or on your clothes. So I basically guide them through, teach them the safety process. At that point, they're comfortable to take it on their own. We have a good hearty lunch, and then we come back afterwards, usually buzzing with ideas and what creative solutions and suggestions people have got. I mean, I had a guy the other day that came back on day 2 with a fishbowl and a balaclava, and we actually reenacted or reshot the last scene of 2001: A Space Odyssey with the lights flashing past, and it was just so creative. It was just wonderful. So yeah, basically once they learn the basics, and I'm comfortable that they're safe in the darkroom, they're off and running, and the process takes over for them. The equipment that the participants can shoot on are, first of all, we use a beautiful 1894 Dalmeo 3B lens, and I actually show them. I've got a copy of the original ledger from 1894, and that lens was sold on January the 14th, 1894, and the man it was sold to. So they get to pick up a piece of history, put it into the camera, and basically see images the same way that the gentleman did back in 1894. The lens was made for portrait photography. It's stunning, it's absolutely beautiful. They get to experience other lenses as well. We use a lovely old camera, and we also use a beautiful new camera I've just had made in Italy, exactly for my wet plate photography. And you get to use a Victorian stand, which is a huge mangle that goes up and down. Immerse yourself in a Victorian studio. I mean, I call my studio the studio of strange. It's like the old curiosity shop. So they get to experience all the old techniques, the old cameras, the old lenses. And when you get in my darkroom, again, it's a Victorian darkroom. You've got all the chemicals, the small bottles, the vials of things. So it's a bit like going back into the Harry Potter world as well. So but yeah, you get full access to everything I've got. I came to own this equipment when I'd done my very first workshop, which was, I think, back in 2017 now. I left the workshop in awe, knowing that I'd finally found my photographic process, the one that I wanted to carry on for the rest of my life, I think, because it had taken over. I actually left my workshop by buying a camera that I'd done it in the workshop. So that was my first camera. I was then hunting for lenses, so auctions, anywhere I could find a lens. I will try and put anything into a camera. So I go to auction houses, I buy on eBay, I look on Facebook. I get donated stuff all the time. People know this mad photographer that can make use of most things. So I'll have a go with most things. I use big old lenses out of projectors, little lenses out of projectors, and then it just grows. It grows and it grows and it grows, and then you find your niche and stuff just comes to you. I built my own equipment because I have bits of old broken cameras. I have old shutters. I rebuild houses for them and mounts for them. I've got a huge array of odds and sods of pieces, photography pieces that I collect, and they all come in useful because not only do we shoot in the studio, but we also shoot outdoors as well, if the weather's good. In which case we can use old 1940s cameras. So then I have dark slides or plate backs that I can put plates into, and then those I make as well, or I start to make or adapt as well. So nothing goes to waste in this process. Everything has a use. So the challenges and how to overcome them with wet collodion when you're working with it is you never do overcome it. And the challenges are the beauty. That is what it's about. With wet collodion, you're dancing this thin line. You're balanced on this line between failure and success, and whatever you consider is failure and success. Because what we're doing is we're balancing light here, the ultraviolet, as much as we can get, because the collodion loves that side of the spectrum. So we're balancing that. We've got our chemicals, we've got our collodion. How old is our collodion? Is it fresh? How fast is it? Has it slowed down a bit? Has it got too much alcohol in it? Is our silver nitrate contaminated slightly? Has it got enough silver content in it? How long our exposures are going to be? Our developer, our fixer. There's so many things, and none of them are problems. They're all part of the process, and it's controlling those, and this balancing act through the middle is what creates these unique pieces of art. Despite being an analog man in a digital world, The best place to find me is probably on Instagram. That's where I'm interacting every day, which is Dave_Shrimpton. There's actually a link through to my wet plate collodion one as well. But that's where I'm working every day. So you'll see stuff, weird and wonderful stuff coming up there all the time. There's my website, which is daveshrimpton.co.uk. The main avenues where you can find out what I'm up to and what I'm doing. Wet collodion. What can I possibly say that hasn't already been beautifully described over the last 170 years? For me, the history is the very beauty of wet collodion. That this incredible process has lasted the test of time is a testament to those, I guess like me, who have fallen in love with it and passed it on. We all come to it and find our own special, unique bond with the process. Like most of us, I was completely hooked when I saw my first image appear through the fog of the fix. It was that very moment that I realised the photographic possibilities with wet collodion are endless, and it would enable me to try and capture the dreams and surreal images in my head in a way that only wet collodion can. Back in the late 1970s, I went to London College of Print on a 5-year apprenticeship in photolithography, where I was taught that photography is the control of many unforeseen variables. How particularly true that mantra has become 50 years later in my wet collodion photography, as I dance this thin line between chemical balance, confusion, failure and success. And that's what I love about the process, that we all see success through completely different eyes. Some creating beautiful, clean, controlled plates, while others embrace the confusion of chemical imbalance and anomalies and beauty that comes with wet collodion. I love the fact that, however I try to tame the process with clean, controlled darkroom and balanced chemistry, this incredible process from 1851 will always decide to play its unpredictable hand in shaping these gorgeous images as they reveal themselves through the fog of the fix for the very first time.